to go, but all he could think about were his little girls at home. He signed on to this job, yeah, to help the ones in need. But every time he ran into that fire, he knew he might not leave. He doesn't want any money for the things he trained to do. He helps the ones in need, and he sees the whole job through. Well aware of the cost that it takes to save a life, well that doesn't matter to the man he is inside. Yeah, we all need to sing that firefighter song. When that man pulled up on scene, all he heard were those kids screaming. He ran right through the front door to save a few young dreams. A few moments later, well, that house had collapsed. He'd never go back home again to hang out with his kids. He didn't want any money for the things he trained to do. He helped the ones in need, and he saw the whole job through. Well aware of the cost that it takes to save a life, well that didn't matter when the family was inside. Yeah, we all need to sing that firefighter song. I hate to be the one that brings up all this sad and bad news, but that man will never have again the things that you and I do. He was taken from his kids and wife while helping a family. So please sit back and thank the Lord there's more men like him that breathe. They don't want any money for the things they train to do. They help the ones in need, and they see the whole job through. They're well aware of the cost that it takes to save a life. Oh, but that doesn't matter to the ones they are inside. Yeah, we all need to sing. Yeah, we all need to sing. Yeah, we all need to sing that firefighter song. And we all need to pray that firefighter's gone.
Things go bump in the night, it's more likely your plumbing acting up than your dead uncle paying you a visit. Call Roto-Rooter for fast 24-hour professional plumbing, sewer, and now water restoration services. Unlike some of those other plumbing companies, you don't have to be scared when you call Roto-Rooter for help.
Call Roto-Rooter, that's the name. And away go troubles down the drain.
At Armstrong, we're proud of the great customer service we provide.
Our hard work has been nationally recognized. Armstrong has received the 2012 Best Customer Service Award for service excellence among independent cable operators.
From our Blue Booties
to our 24/7 support, our customer service sets us apart from other providers.
That's the Armstrong experience.
Armstrong, one wire, infinite possibilities.
The views expressed and opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Z-Talk Radio or its sponsor.
You're listening to Z-Talk Radio, the #1 choice for music, sports, news, and talk radio. So keep that dial locked to ztalkradio.com.
Arby's has an agreement to feature their good friend Pepsi in 2 commercials a year. Well, Arby's messed up and forgot about the second commercial. So here it is. Pepsi. Cool, refreshing, and goes great with Arby's sandwiches and other Arby's foods. Arby's, we have Pepsi.
It is time to welcome the person that will guide you through the supernatural realm. Your host, Tim Roxbury.
And welcome back to another great Friday evening right here on the Z Talk Radio Network. Well, we have actually two special guests tonight. We have a returning guest, Chip Reichanthal, and Mark Keyes. And as soon as I get his bio up here, I will say that he's a former former firefighter. He wrote the book Chasing Shadows. So, Mark Keyes, how you doing this evening?
Hi, Tim. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. I just got done reading the book, and I thought it was really phenomenal. You definitely keep the readers glued to the book, that's for sure.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate hearing that. One of my biggest concerns is that it was going to be boring for people, and it's not a technical book, which I think a lot of people tend to write on ghost hunting. It's basically, from my point of view, going from a skeptical believer, I'll call myself, to putting myself into the world of the paranormal to try to discover whether ghosts were real for myself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's neat. It's a neat book. Chip, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's great to be back on, of course, as always. Love being on this show and always hanging out with you, Tim, and especially in honor of this gentleman here, because Mark's book, in my opinion, is the best book that's ever been written on the paranormal. For me personally, it's one of the best books I've read about any subject. And, even though I'm always full of superlatives, this is really a prime example of how to get it done right, Right. I was just thinking while you guys were talking, because look, I'm kind of fly on the wall through most of tonight's show. So I will shut up in a minute. but in all the years that I've been curious about the paranormal, and then throughout time as I kind of got my grasp in the realm, it's kind of hard to imagine how it's done right. People ask me sometimes, if I'm going to write a book about this, what do you think I should do? I'll do whatever you want. But here in this particular case with Mark, who's a criminal investigator and really has spent his adult life giving value to everything in his purview, everything he sees and experiences and perceives. It's people that want to entertain the idea of ghosts or hauntings or spirit or whatever usually have to suspend their beliefs. We all come into this realm with our own preconceptions and beliefs and perceptions of things in the world. So in order for anything to make value in this realm to this gentleman here, it's got to pass a test that's a little bit more strict in standard than most. And the way he conveys it throughout the book and all the things that he talks about and the things that he does give value to, and ultimately the way he concludes with a very kind and nice view of a rather dark realm, especially for a guy who generally sees the worst in people, both living and dead, in his work and in his spare time doing malevolent hauntings. To have the tone of the book, kind of everyday guy, really helps hit all those points home.
Right.
So I am just a huge fan of both this gentleman and his book, Chasing Shadows, and I recommend it to everyone.
And for him to be able to bring 20 years of experience in the police department, that says something to him, and it also says something about the paranormal field. He's able to look at the paranormal in a lot of different ways that the average person doesn't see or might not recognize. So that's pretty awesome to have the best of both worlds, so to speak, you know?
Yeah, it really is. And before we carry on talking about poor Mark like he's not even here, I just wanted to add one more thing. Oh, you know what? I forgot what that point was. Well, one is, you know, I know that you, Tim, have a background with working as a fireman or with the fire department,
right.
And you know, Mark has done that. He's been an officer, he's been a soldier, and we definitely commend him and thank him for his service to not only our paranormal realm, which he does masterfully, but also, you know, his communities, his state, and our country. And I think that's rather marvelous. Not to mention that they work malevolent hauntings in their spare time. They're not just poking around homes. They're helping people that are in trouble and besieged by something that they can't see and seems to be defeating them in their own home. And he kind of brings that same sense of safety to these folks, you know, that he does as a police officer to his community. And boy, there's a lot to be said about that, because so many teams are unequipped to do that sort of thing, and things generally go wrong, but not in that case. And I think that's awesome.
Right.
And I'm going to shut up.
I would like to jump in and just say thank you to you both for those kind words. And I'd just like to point out, I had told this to Chip before, but he was actually a major inspiration for me to start this book. Mm-hmm. It's something that it's a 30-year process that it took me to get to the point where I was comfortable enough to begin, and I wanted to begin, but it just really wasn't pushing myself to do it yet. And I was honored to be called one day by Chip just to get a little bit of information on a book he was writing. And through that process of the portion, it was a very small portion that he allowed me to read and just give some input on how police word things when they go out into the public and interact with different clients and witnesses. And it was just so fascinating to me, and I loved being a part of that it was the final thing that finally pushed me to go out and put the book together. And Chip, I have to thank you again for allowing me to be a part of your book and giving me that extra push.
Well, I'm very humbled by your gratitude, good brother. And you know, you sure ran with it. I mean, you took whatever inspiration that was granted from me, which I am overjoyed by, and really hit it home. You did such a great job. So it makes it, you know, the tenfold or 1,000-fold the honor that it was to just, you know you and see you throughout the whole process of your book. And yes, and for the sake of the listeners and anyone familiar with my book, Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth, Mark here is the living inspiration for the character of Detective Locke, and actually changed the frame of the whole way that I approached my story, because I was just going to do it from the book is about a spirit medium who learns that his best friend has been charged with murder. The victim is known to them both, and it was a very messy situation. But I interviewed Mark for my radio program Beyond the Norm, and the interview went so well, and I was so inspired by the work he does, both as an officer and in the paranormal realm, that I attacked my book from a whole new vantage point and brought Detective Locke in to be the guy who lets our central character know that his best friend has been arrested and charged with murder, and who the victim was and all that. And I had asked Mark in that first chapter that I worked on, you know, if the Detective Locke's words were, used correctly, and how it's really done procedurally in real life, and how close it meets, to at least seeming real. And he was extremely helpful with that. But the dialogue of the characters in my book went so well that I kept bringing the character of Detective Locke in, and he's really a central character throughout the entirety of the book. So to have that kind of thanks, is something that really humbles me, and I feel ever grateful, and I thank you, brother.
And the amazing part about that whole thing was that until after the book was published and I received a copy and read it, I didn't know that I was the inspiration for that character. So that was just an amazing surprise for me. And to get even more interesting, when I was on Chip's radio show, just the way he presented the whole show was basically a forward for my book. And just the way it was presented just fell right into place. And I asked him to do the forward for my book. So we are sort of both, whether we like it or not, entangled for the rest of time in each other's writings.
Yeah, I love it personally. And we have this synchronicity and this entanglement. Kind of we're getting into properties of physics, which is also awesome.
There's not too many paranormal teams that look at it, through a physics perspective or even a scientific perspective. Thomas Fusco has just joined us in chat.
Oh, awesome!
It's so wonderful to see the PPA, Pennsylvania Paranormal Association, look at their investigative techniques and their methodology. It's scientific, like wormholes and gamma radiation and EMF. And everything that we didn't look at before, and to see them doing that and applying that methodology is really, really neat. I think we need more of it.
Yeah,
Mr. Fusco is a great fan of mine. I was lucky enough to have him on a radio show that I host. I believe it was the first radio show that he appeared on when he wrote his book, and it was just marvelously written, and the way that our team investigates, we do use a psychic medium, but we conduct separate technical investigations, and much of the stuff he was talking about in the book were things that we were working on, and he just put it together, the background and the reasoning behind why investigators should be out there looking for certain things and documenting in a certain way. It was just a fantastic book, and it's great to have him in the chat room. And Thomas, if you're listening tonight, thanks for doing what you do.
Yeah, we do think and he does it really, really well. And I'm thrilled that he's in chat with us. That's a very exciting thing,
his knowledge of the physics and you name it, the quantum physics and astrophysics is so far beyond my comprehension. But it's just so great to talk to him and kind of bend his brain on why he thinks certain paranormal events happen. He's a great resource for people.
He sure is.
Yeah,
he's been on Supernatural Realm numerous times, and Thomas and we've had a lot of off-the-air discussions, and his mind is just amazing. Chris DiCasare is actually with us in chat too.
Oh, nice! Wow, boy, this is getting really good.
So, Mark,
just prior to coming on air here, we had a chance to speak with each other, and we do share common backgrounds with the fire department, and that's one thing that I've seen a lot of lately. People from fire, police, and EMS, all these emergency services are really getting into paranormal investigating currently, and I think that's great, and I think it carries over from the type of people who get involved in that. They're used to responding to homes to check out certain issues, whether it's fire, a heart attack, a police call, and it's just a really easy migration into the paranormal world and investigating. So it's great to see so many professionals jumping on board like that as well.
Yeah.
It takes a special person to become firefighters and police officers and even paranormal researchers. I think you gotta have, a caring heart and a passion to help other people. And I think, those of us that have been involved with the services, protection services, make unique and very special investigators as far as the paranormal goes.
I agree, and that's one thing. I think I was so lucky when my wife and I started our team. We had a pile of people who were already involved in community service type of jobs, public servants, that it made it really easy because there was that amount of compassion for the clients just going into it. They wanted to help, and this is a little bit of a bizarre field to go out and help in. And we have some skeptics on our team that they're borderline non-believers, but they also look at it as we're gonna kind of look at what our psychic medium is doing, and if they're wrong and we have the ability to help, well, why don't we just let our medium go and do her work, and let's take a look at it, and let's help them anyway, because that's the goal, to help them out, whether we find something normal, paranormal. If a medium can help somebody out, they're fine with doing that, although they may not be a believer. Their goal is to help the client.
Right.
Yeah.
Mark, what got you started into the paranormal, and what caused you to form the PPA?
Well, it goes back many years, back to when I was 10 years old. I heard my name called when I was out in my backyard by myself one day. And, at that time I didn't know whether it was, just something in my head or if I heard somebody calling. And, kind of got me a little bit interested in such thing as ghosts and psychics, just thinking about it more or less at that time. But, I was also a big science fiction nut, and I loved anything on television related to that. And several years later, I happened to be home alone again, laying on my couch watching TV, and my house is all locked up. As clear as day, I heard my name called again, and it was crystal clear. It was right behind me. This time it startled me a little bit more because I was in my house. It made it real this time. And, I'm thinking, geez, if it's like a spirit or ghost or something that knows my name, that's kind of creepy. So this all sort of propelled me into doing a lot of reading on it at that time. There was no internet. So whenever I could find a book or a documentary on psychics and hauntings and anything related to the metaphysical world, I like to watch it. And, it wasn't until later on in life when I'm still trying to understand what happened to me years ago, I wanted to start studying haunted locations, but it was a bit difficult. I grew up in kind of a small town, and there wasn't a lot of people who were reporting hauntings. Even if they had one, they didn't want people knowing about it. And I thought, well, it might be easier to try to find psychic mediums. And that wasn't really too much easier. And it took me a little while, but finally, just by chance, I happened to find one and start studying psychics first. Mm-hmm. And again, it was trying to understand, are they real? Because I watched an awful lot of television shows and read an awful lot of books, and although I was open to the possibility that hauntings could exist, I wasn't really 100% convinced. And for me, the only way I was going to find out was to go and study this stuff for myself. So, one thing led to another, from studying psychic mediums to seeing if, what they were coming up with sort of melded into the haunted locations. And my wife and I actually had heard of a local group through her father. And we decided we were going to go and check them out. And we did, and we joined and started doing some local investigations on homes and a couple businesses. But the one thing that I felt was lacking a little bit there, we wanted to do something a little different, was to do resolutions. They were a very technical-based team, very good at investigating, very scientific, very good at collecting evidence. But I was noticing clients were scared, and just by presenting evidence to them was not helping resolve the issues for them. It wasn't getting the fear out of them. And we really didn't have that many resources that we could go to help resolve the issues. So that was our goal when we started. We knew it would probably be a little while before we can get all these resources together, but we started out with a great group of professional people, and our goal in mind was to get these resources together to do resolutions for people while we're studying the physical effects on the environment in a home or a business itself, and trying to document things. And it was great because we could also bring a psychic medium in to the picture to do the resolution stuff separate from us, but we can study her in that kind of environment as well. So that's kind of how the whole thing got rolling for me.
Wow, that's neat. Chip, do you have any questions?
I think you're doing a great job. Well, not just yet.
Okay.
Maybe a couple of minutes from now I will.
It's neat. You know, we were talking about this a little bit before the show. It's interesting how, you know, when you get involved with something or you're looking for something, whether it be a job or hobby or whatever, it's interesting how, you know, how opportunities come available and how, you know, one door closes, another one opens. And your experience, Mark, has been interesting. It's been very, very neat. You know how your life has gone up to this point.
You know, I've said it a million times, and I'll say it again. I almost feel like I'm being guided somewhere. Mm-hmm. Where that end is, I don't know. But you know, whether there's something to you know, the power of positive thinking, or you know, everybody's heard of The Secret, that you know, that premise where what you concentrate on basically opens up for you. You know, what you focus on becomes your reality. But you know, the law of attraction. I tend to be you know, a bit compulsive on things. I remember, you know, when I wanted to get my first car, all I could think about, you know, all day long, all night long, is what car I wanted, and there seems to be some truth, for me at least, to that law of attraction, where something would open up to lead me to the possibility of getting the result that I wanted, and it was the same thing. I, you know, really didn't know how to start a group or where to go, and that just by chance opened up a local team right down the road for me, which I had no idea about, but my father-in-law happened to just start talking about it one day and told us about it. And, you know, when we were looking to put a psychic medium on, you know, just by chance again, we had a psychic medium presented to us. And, you know, it wasn't an overnight thing. You know, by focusing on something, it could be, you know, 6 months to a year sometimes. But, you know, in the end, just strictly by putting it out there, I guess, and just concentrating and thinking about it so much over and over, it seems like all these things just sort of popped up by chance into my life, and I'm very grateful that that happened. But it's you know, been a real privilege to work with a lot of the people I do, and so far the team has been flowing really well. And you know, like any team, I guess we have our ups and downs, and I can say, you know, we have the experience of having made a lot of mistakes early on, and you know, I tell people, don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's the best way you're going to learn. And now we know what not to do because of all the mistakes we made before. So, you know, it wasn't perfect, but opportunities definitely popped up for us.
Right. Yeah, there's really no guidebook or anything. I mean, well, at least up till now with Thomas and David Roundtree, there really wasn't a guidebook to teach you, you know, about the paranormal or even how to start a paranormal research team. You know, I found out by, you know, working with a group before forming Butler Paranormal, and just, you know, getting on Facebook and different media sites and the internet to see exactly what these people do and what the research is all about. And that's pretty much how I found out, you know, about the investigative methods and things, and what equipment works, what equipment to use, what equipment not to use, such as the flashlight and other things. So, you know, it's been a learning experience for me for sure, and I'm sure it has for you as well.
Yeah, I've actually told David Roundtree before that his book was so in line with the way that we did things, except that it expanded. You know, it definitely went, you know, beyond what we were doing at the time. But when we brought new members into our team, we'd have quite a rigorous training system set up for them, because, you know, not only did we want them to know some theory of why we're doing certain things, but they have to know how to use the equipment too, and what's going to affect equipment and what's not. And we want people to get out and play with a lot of equipment because it reacts so differently in different, you know, environments. His book was just so nicely put together that I actually have our new members coming in and read it, just because it's just perfectly written for beginners coming on to see what equipment is doing what out in the field right now and the theory behind it. And he explains it a lot better than I can. But great book. And we've had the honor of helping a few teams. We get emails all the time asking how to get started, and I always recommend that book. But I also tell everybody to read as much as you can, because you're going to find stuff you like and stuff you don't like, things you agree with and don't agree with, but it puts ideas in your head, and use different equipment, and you find out what you like and what you don't like. And again, we made a million mistakes. Use some equipment we got rid of, and just different audio things that we tried. And I had a decent amount of audio surveillance in my background from work, and we were able to take some techniques and use those in the field as well. And it's nice to be able to pass that along now, because when we were going through it, we had the local team that did all this stuff, but they could only take us so far. And I think I like kind of passing along some of the mistakes I made now more than actually like going out in the field and doing stuff. It's really nice just to be able to pass along everything at this point.
Mm-hmm. What has working with the television network, what's that been like to be on the show, The Haunted?
That was something we put a little thought in before we did. And one of the things that sort of pushed us over the edge to actually do it was that they were not going to come out on the investigations and film with us, because we have had a couple local media groups and news stations come out, and they wanted to film and kind of show what we did. And I'm so compulsive and anal, I guess, that it was really tough for me to do, because they make noise that it's hard for them to keep quiet, and they constantly have to stop and change tapes and batteries. And it was really frictional for me to be able to do that. So I had some concerns, because the cases that they were looking for were real life cases that teams were working on. And when they told us that they were going to be shooting stuff after the investigation and wanted us to do the investigation, they were looking for footage from us and input from us on each case. We agreed to do it at that point. And one of the big reasons that I wanted to do it was because, like I mentioned earlier, I watched so many television shows and read so many books over the years that, I wanted to believe, but I just wasn't ready to yet. So with the show, I got some firsthand experience to see if what I was seeing on TV was accurate. Was it real? And just how close to reality were the shows, at least on this particular show. So it was great. Animal Planet kept bringing us back. We had a couple cases that they were interested in about a year before the show actually went to air, before it was even sold. But we were contacted by the production company and said that they wanted a couple of our cases to work on. And when the show finally sold, we went out and did a few more things with them, and then they brought us a couple, and it just kind of snowballed for us. We weren't really anticipating doing so much, but it was a great experience. It gave me an inside look, which I to this day kind of maintain that most television shows, including that one, should be based on a true story rather than true, because as soon as you put any type of editing in there, it changes a little bit. It was pretty accurate. The only thing I could say with The Haunted was that some timelines got out of sync a little bit, where they have some things reversed every now and then as far as their timeline goes. But they were authentic cases with footage from the teams and the team's input as the show unfolded and the clients told their story, with a little bit of recreation mixed in there. But it was a good experience overall, and I'm glad we did it.
It's interesting how, in the book you talk about, as the show started, the opportunities for you and your team to investigate, hauntings that involved animals or a family pet. And that was pretty interesting, I thought. And then you could, you were able to maybe put that in one of the episodes.
Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons that they also were interested in working with the team. We have a police canine dog, and he's since passed away, but he was a working dog. And Joe Hawk, who was his handler, and myself sat down one day and said, you know what, I wonder how the dog's name was Ben, how Ben would react going into some of these homes, because I think most people who they might not believe in psychic mediums or hauntings, but most people will say dogs really have a heightened sense of energy or whatever. They tend to pick up on things, and when it comes to hauntings, I think people will say, yeah, animals are highly reactive to that stuff and see stuff we don't, hear stuff we don't. And we wanted to take him out, and it was a perfect dog because he was trained to go into strange places and work. And for him, it's play. So there were a lot of things he was already trained for that we could use as indicators out on cases as well. And just one example, he had a certain indicator if someone was behind a closed door. He would do that. So we would look at his indicators, but then also we'd look at different things like respiratory rate and alertness. If we put him down in a neutral position in the middle of the hallway, and let's say it's a warm night and he's panting, does he go from panting and nice and relaxed to alert position where he's not panting? And we key off of those things, and it's only one small indicator, but we wanted to see if anything else was happening at the same time. And what we found out was when he was reacting, we were actually getting some other evidence documented as well. So just a fantastic opportunity to work with the dog, and we've done some animal research laboratories as well, and had a couple other cases where the clients were reporting animals to be haunting the place. So it was sort of a perfect fit for the show, and I think that's kind of why we got so lucky to be invited back.
Exactly. I've had cases where the client would tell us that there's certain areas that their pet or their dog won't go. It was getting scratched or pushed, staring at the wall for no unknown reason. So that's to me, I think that pets are more in tune, and dogs as well, to what changes may be occurring in the environment. We have a question from Chris in chat. He asked, it's a question for both you. The creative process is unique one for each writer. At what point did they realize or decide that their book was ready for publication, or whether or not it was finished?
That's a good question. From my perspective, I'm still not sure it's finished. I've asked for input from several people, and I wanted to make sure that there wasn't something that I was way off on my thinking, or if somebody felt that something was really off or missing. So it's I'm pretty content it's finished the way it is, but I'm continuously looking to change, and if anybody's followed our team over the course of even the last 7 years, I've made so many changes to the website. I'm somebody who can't sit still. I've got to constantly be changing and creating stuff. So for me, I'm kind of content it's finished. I've been getting a lot of requests to expand on stories, though, so that might be a little push to me to go to book 2. But I think I'm pretty good right now at this. How about you, Chip?
Oh, you had me at book 2, brother. Well, for me, actually, it's not my first book. It's just the first book that got published. I wrote a science fiction, and I'm adding some science fiction elements to the book that I'm working on now, which may indeed be a sequel to Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth. But I had a book that was a science fiction. I think Thomas Fusco, who's listening in chat, would kind of like this book because it deals with a lot of things like super geometry, sacred geometry, the universe and extraterrestrials, and in this particular case, it was a book about the element of Earth, out of Earth, air, fire, and water. That was the real extraterrestrial enemy. They were looking for people from outer space, but it was actually rocks and dirt and stone and metal that were acting out because, they're used to humans that were that lived among the rock, like in the Stone Age. And now we're seeming to poison all the other elements by using theirs, and a big thing. For the book that did get published, it was originally, I was thinking about writing a nonfiction. My years tuned as a spirit medium, attuned. But, because I'm not as attuned as I used to be, it's kind of advertising something from the past. So instead, I turned it into a fictional story that used my real life elements as a spirit medium, but gave them to the central character in the book, and turned it kind of into a paranormal murder mystery. And it's something that you don't see every day. I was up to chapter 7. I got stuck because I didn't want the medium I didn't want the medium's family members involved. I didn't want to get into the medium's personal life. I really wanted to concentrate on his first-person perspective, communicating with the dead, and his perspective, trying to bail his friend out of some trouble. But again, I had Mark Keyes on my radio program, Beyond the Norm. And, the kind of work that he does is just so much more wonderful than I normally see. I mean, look, Tim, as a radio host, as do I, we have the opportunity to talk to our heroes. Mm-hmm. We have the opportunity to engage the greatest minds and talents of the realm.
Right.
And, as Mark is talking about his book, I kind of feel like a proud father, although I would have had to have gotten lucky at a very young age in order to make that happen. I still, because what I've seen throughout my tenure in this realm is good people know who good people are.
Right.
We've got Thomas Fusco and Chris DiCasare in our chat room. That says a lot. One of the greatest minds in our realm. And also we have a gentleman who was really attacked, for lack of a better word, by a malevolent entity. And after the years of hardship that he endured from that, and the way it affected his life in so many different ways, to come away with it, thinking, well, there wasn't any real malevolence to this spirit. That's a beautiful thing. It kind of honors a kindness that we don't every day see. And here with Mark Keyes, there is a kindness in him. And I think that, the fact that he's talking about a TV show that started with the thought of engaging animals. Right. I mean, something that also we just don't see every day. People aren't really aware of how limited our sight and hearing is. The light waves and sound waves that are available out there, a very minor amount are experienced by us, and animals have a little something beyond that. And to see, his first venture into television have something to do with something that extraordinary, really speaks to the character of our guest here, to Mark Keyes, and just to see the people that salute him on his journey. I think his book, his first book was done. I liked the way that I loved his voice throughout the entirety of the book. It didn't exclude anyone. It was a very inclusive thing. You could hear his voice as he wrote it. You could understand and empathize with his experiences and how he formed and gained the opinions that he did. And it's just a wonderful thing. But as far as the creative process goes, and to answer the question, I think in your heart of hearts, you kind of know, Exactly. But Mark's interview with my show, I took the 7 chapters that I had and had been stuck on for about 3 months, And all of a sudden, a light went off in my head. A homicide investigator is going to introduce the story, and he's kind of going to be the person that our main character looks to, attributes to, for character, for answering mysteries and all sorts of things. And that kind of translates into real life, you know. I mean, Mark is a personal hero of mine. When I did the rewrite and the inspiration after interviewing him for my program, it took me 3 days to completely write the book. It just clicked, and I knew it was done. Actually, it was accepted before I finished the last 2 chapters, so I kind of hurried at the end, but I knew it was ready.
Mm-hmm. Mark, have you ever felt the presence of a spirit or a different energy at a suicide case, or maybe a motor vehicle accident that you were called to?
I have not, no. In fact, I'm really sort of disabled when it comes to feeling energy, mm-hmm. and it's not for lack of trying. I actually worked with a medium years ago before I got into any of this, and she suggested that I get into meditation and Reiki for some back pain I was having at the time. And one of the things she explained to me, she was a Reiki instructor and wanted me to learn from her and essentially use it on myself to help heal my back. And she told me about different sensations that people feel as they're getting it done to them and as they're doing it for people and progressing. And I tried like the darndest to try to feel any kind of energy, and maybe I was trying too hard, mm-hmm. but I'm not really good at feeling energy. I've been on many, many crime scenes. I haven't really felt anything there. I can say that one distinct thing that most investigators will probably agree with, I've been into a lot of houses where people were reporting hauntings and some businesses. And after you're there for a few minutes, if you don't have anything happening right away, you sort of get comfortable in your environment. And, even if it's a dark, creepy basement, after a few minutes, you tend to, become a little more settled down and relaxed. Everybody knows that feeling. Then all of a sudden it changes. The room just changes, and you get that creepy feeling. Just, you might be in the middle of a conversation, not thinking about anything, and all of a sudden you're not alone. So I have felt that out on cases, but never at work.
Mm-hmm.
Again, part of that could be attributed to the fact that I'm just so busy and locked in on what I need to do when we're out in a scene as well, that I'm just really kind of disregarding anything, of a non-physical nature. It's, strictly trying to get everything documented and collected and put together.
Mm-hmm. Chip, any questions? Any comments?
Yeah, actually, I do want to go back to the TV show, because I again am still swimming in the idea that, his first foray into the TV world was in salute, really, of animals and how they contribute to the field. And you had, it was more than one episode. You had a few cases that dealt specifically with animals, Mark, and also until recently used, the canine, the trained police dog and the investigations. What is it about the animals that brought the idea about in the first place? And was it always dogs? Do you see similar reactions from other kinds of animals that maybe we're not thinking about?
Oh, yeah. One of the questions on our investigation request form is, do you have any animals? And if so, what are they? And do they seem to be reacting to anything going on in the home? And it's actually one of the hardest things to study because, using a dog as an example, they could hear things from blocks away where you might have a dog staring at a wall for 15 minutes, and what he's really hearing is something, 2 blocks down the street. So it's really, really tough to interpret animals, but again, we take a look at that and we want to see is, are they reacting to something when something else is going on that you could consider paranormal? As far as the show goes, the concept was brought up through this production company, and it wasn't necessarily meant for Animal Planet, but it was one of, I think, 3 networks that were interested in seeing something put together for a potential run. And animals, like I said before, they really seem to have heightened senses physically and maybe spiritually. They could also be the targets of the most extreme activity just because they are believed to be so open. And, it's kind of interesting. I have run across some mediums, psychics over the years who claim that they can read dogs and cats and, not sit and have a conversation like you and I, but they can pick up different emotions and get information out of them on what might be happening in a home. And, we kind of wanted to take a look at that too. It was, to give you an example of why I was interested in this, cats are really interesting animals. And I think they can hear as well. They've got a built-in time clock where, for people who have a cat, if you get home from work at 3 o'clock, a cat's sitting there waiting, the cat knows what time it is. They're very strange beings, but I had an experience with what may have been a ghost of a cat, if you will, where my wife, when she lived with her parents before we got married, had a sister, and her sister had a cat who had passed away. And I was not aware of this, but I happened to be over there one morning, and everybody had gone off to work, and I, was hearing what I believe was her sister moving around the room, some, banging on the computer keypad, and some things hit the floor. So not wanting to be rude, I went to say goodbye before I left, and there was nobody in the room. So later on, I checked with my wife and said, "Hey, do you ever have anything strange going on in your sister's room?" And she said, "Yeah, we think a cat is there." And I said, "You don't have a cat?" She's like, No, our cat died years ago, but we think, she's still there. And I said, wow, I heard something in there for sure. And, after I thought about it, the noises I was hearing banging on the floor are very similar to what cats sound like when they jump off of a bed or a couch or something. And, whether it was a cat or not, I don't know. But it kind of piqued my curiosity about animals. And then we started getting a few cases that clients were reporting seeing animals in homes, dogs, cats, and our most bizarre were monkeys, tiny little spider monkeys. And that was one of the cases that made it to the haunted. And it was a candle shop that used to be a doctor's home. He had a laboratory in the basement to study yellow fever. He had thousands of spider monkeys that he brought in, infected them with the disease, cut their heads off, and studied their brain and spinal cord, and buried the remains on the property. And years later, going through 2 different businesses, both owners claimed that they have seen monkeys running through the establishment there. And it got me curious, so I really wanted to be a part of that show for that reason and really dig into learning a little bit more about animals and animal hauntings.
Mm-hmm. Was that the candle shop case, or was that another?
It is, yes.
Okay, yeah, I kind of thought so because I remember reading about the monkey cages in the basement, and the client and everything felt that maybe they were monkeys haunting the location because of the different things that were going on with them.
And what I find even extraordinary, we brought our medium Virginia Centrillo in on the case, and she has no background information on any of the locations we go to. And sure enough, without any background information, of all things, she picked up on monkeys in the candle shop. Like, it used to be this real big mansion of a home turned into a candle shop, and the last thing I would think about would be spider monkeys in that kind of building, but she picked up on it.
Wow. I know in your book you talk a lot about the ghost effect. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and what it is?
Yeah, one of the things that I do when I go out, I watch clients and I watch their reactions, and I listen to how they're explaining their experiences and how they're reacting to them. And I just started noticing the same thing over and over with certain things, because we were able to go in and really dismiss a lot of their claims. Some of them were legitimate, but a lot of them were just normal things happening. That what happens, people will have a real or very real perceived experience where, let's say they see a cup slide across the table. And they believe now that they have a ghost in their house, whatever the case may be that led them to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
After that, every little thing that happens that's out of the ordinary becomes the ghost did it. There was a ghost again.
Right.
Ghost shut the door, not really thinking, somebody just came in the front door and the pressure pulled the door shut. So I kept on seeing this case after case with different clients, and they reported, some very significant things, but then, we also had a picture frame fall over, a tiny little chandelier pop, cover pop off, just different little things. And everything that happened just became the ghost did it. It all turned into this real big haunting ball that we needed to untangle. And, that became an integral part of how we investigate as well. We want to, if there is some paranormal activity going on, we want to separate the normal stuff from the paranormal stuff. So we could say when you experience all this stuff over here, that's just normal. You can disregard it. It has nothing to do with the haunting here. You're winding yourself up and your brain is now programmed to respond that way, but don't get worked up when it happens. This is what we're looking at over here. This is what we need to concentrate on. So let's focus on that stuff. But it was a very interesting, unanticipated side effect of me investigating and just watching people that I started to notice that client after client seemed to be going through this. It's almost a type of post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, I know from experience, sometimes, we as investigators can get a little bit involved with the emotional part of it and the clients, and sometimes it's difficult to hold back getting emotionally involved with the client, especially when they believe that it's one of their loved ones or their Aunt Mary or somebody that may be trying to communicate while you're doing an EVP session with them. It's kind of hard not to get involved with that, per se.
Yeah. One thing it's very similar to that I'll comment on as well, is I've seen this with several psychic mediums, and Virginia, who we've worked with the longest. They live in a very magical world, and they can see things and hear things that we don't. They feel physical sensations, and their realm of possibility is a lot larger than a regular person who can't experience that stuff. So just in conversation, say after an investigation with clients, she would be very agreeable to everything that the clients were saying, as if everything was fact that they were saying and part of a haunting. But we sort of had to reprogram her. And she's an extremely, extremely good investigator now, because she does a lot of debunking as well. But this is where my police background comes in. Kind of had to tell her, and even new investigators when they come in, just because somebody's saying something doesn't mean it's true. Right. Not to say they're lying, but they may wholeheartely believe in what they're reporting. It's just that it's, say, a natural cause for something. And, I kind of had to... work with the mediums and say, listen to what they're saying, but try to prove that one way or another. Don't just take it at face value. You got to look into it. And the ghost effect even happens with investigators, and I've had it happen to myself. It happens to team members, and we're constantly trying to ground each other, because the most obvious for me was when we were out in a very, very large manufacturing building that it was vacant and being remodeled, but it was 600,000 square feet of different rooms, 3 stories, and sound traveled very good in there because it was made of concrete and it was mostly empty at this point. And we had a team that had heard footsteps, and they were chasing these footsteps, and every little thing from there after that night, they were pumped up thinking they had all this paranormal activity going on. Well, we actually backtracked the footsteps to my team coming down a set of stairs, and just the way it echoed into a different section of the building, they thought it was footsteps in their building. But we were able to recreate that. But investigators have to be careful, too, because as soon as you have a really good experience, you got to be careful that everything after that doesn't become the ghost did it. You have to break everything down individually and take a look at it individually. And on the flip side, there's a different kind of ghost effect, if you will, where you might have investigators in a small home or a small building. And once you kind of go through it a couple times and there's really nothing happening, and most investigators will tell you that most of the time you're out there, there's not much happening, people tend to get bored. And I've had investigators say to me only after being there like maybe 2 hours for one night, there's nothing going on here, this place isn't haunted. And I'd always ask, well, why are you coming to that conclusion? And he said, well, I don't feel anything, I don't see anything, nothing's really happening. But when you look at the clients, they're there over the course of a longer period of time. So a lot of things tend to pile up after a while. But, for a team to go out and just be there 2 hours on one night isn't really being fair to the location or the client say it's not haunted. What we can say is there's nothing going on right now, but further investigation needs to be done. You can't just judge it, after a short period of time on one night, because most of the clients we talk to, and I'm sure you agree that you've had clients like this will tell you, okay, well, what's happened here this whole week? Well, we had a door slam.
Right.
Okay, how about before that? Well, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Okay, and what did you have happen then? Well, we heard some footsteps. So they're only getting like maybe one event on a single day, and we're going in there for a very short period of time. So it's really tough to catch and document stuff when you're there that short a time. So that's what on the reverse side of the ghost effect. I try to tell people, don't judge something on just very short hours and not feeling anything. You got to give it more time, put more time into it, more investigating and research before you can determine it's haunted or not haunted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And like you say in the book, the client's perspective of what a ghost or demon is may be totally different than what yours is. That's why we do the research and the background checks and what may be going on history-wise at a location. We look at, we may look at it totally different than what the client may or may not.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chip.
Yeah, I just wanted to interject quickly to emphasize, that we're talking about the ghost effect, and in my eyes, in addition to we're talking a lot about private dealings in hauntings, and it also applies to public investigations, and there have been countless times that I have cited Mark's book, Chasing Shadows, and his ghost effect, because it so succinctly kind of dots an I on kind of an unwritten thing. And in public investigations also, with paracons and things of that nature, and helping properties gain some funding to help them renovate when they put their necks out, and representing the property as haunted. There's a lot of times where that ghost effect comes into play in public investigations too. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And, and Mark's been talking about the mediums that he's worked with, and he's had the great fortune of working with some of the finest mediums out there, And again, like he says, it was kind of a magical thing. It's as if he was meant to be with these certain people. But I've had the misfortune of having along with us on public events some not so good mediums. Of course, we've worked with some very good ones also. But there have been times where, we have people that represent themselves as mediums, and they have a very exaggerated sense of their ability, let's just say. And if their sense of something is saying to a group of impressionable people, "Ooh, I've got a bad feeling about this room," or "Oh, I think something just touched me," right, then that puts everybody on guard. And if, especially in a public setting where it may be kind of a teaching opportunity, to have a group full of people that are blank slates. Now, basically, the well has poisoned now, and they're all waiting for themselves to be touched or something bad to happen, because between some of the TV shows, some people that kind of show off and always seem to amp up the fear element in these things, it really helps to set off something. And not only is it not a benefit to a client in a private setting, but it is also not a necessarily a good benefit to good people in our realm to have to deal with something like that. And people sometimes are easily impressionable, and a lot of their beliefs. It's easier to believe the bad stuff, especially when we're dealing with unknowns, the unseen. There's our biggest fears, generally speaking, have to do with the unknown. Right. And to have something like that, set off people, impressionable people, then in my eyes, it makes this book and this talk about that subject, the ghost effect, all the more better.
Exactly. Thomas says that he's told folks you're dealing with something that can be directly manipulated. The face of physical reality, and he also says, and guess what? Your body is that physical reality. We have a caller from the 570 area code. Go ahead. I think this might be Chris, but I'm not sure.
Hello, Tim. This is Chris, and
hey.
I want to say congratulations. You've got a great double feature right now.
Definitely.
Mark and Chip. This is left the Settlement Trap, followed by Escape to Witch Mountain. This is like my childhood. I love this. It's a great double feature. I'm so glad you got these two gentlemen together. I have the honor of knowing them both on a personal basis. They're wonderful people. I admire them. I value them. When I first met them, neither of them were authors, and now they both are. And I was curious if being an author has changed their lives in any way.
Yeah.
Chip, I'll let you go first.
Oh, the chicks are lining up.
I'll agree with that, Chip. I got my three daughters, my wife, my aunt. I think she's there.
I got my wife and my daughter, and
Gee, maybe I write a book.
There you go. It's kind of neat to have to answer Chris's question, and I know I speak for Mark because we're thrilled to have Chris in our realm, and we've got Chris DiCasare and Thomas Fusco in the chat room, so we from this side of the veil have the same kind of honor, a great double feature that we're thrilled by. It's nice to have the title, and plus it's something that will live beyond our physical bodies, and that's kind of a neat thing. I'm not big on immortality or anything. I never really was, it hurts to be my age, so I don't want to be around for another 100 years. That's
Why
not
not?
gonna be any good. But still, it's kind of a neat thing, and it gives us kind of a credibility that we may not have. Well, I may not have had, before having that title.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that, Chip, and Chris, you might have found the same thing. Since the book came out, I have been getting a lot more requests to lecture. And one of the interesting things is the way I wrote the book, a lot of it that came out of me was based on certain questions that I would receive over and over at different lectures and events that we would go to. And it really made me sit down and think about things a little bit harder and take a look at myself a little bit. And I think it's made me a little more secure in the way I do lecture now, because I'm a little more confident in what I think. And it's really been a great experience. And for me, I think the biggest thing that I'm really enjoying is I've had the book out to several people in the judicial system who one person read the book, and then somebody would just read a page or two, and then they'd call me and say, hey, I want a copy too. This is really great. And I was really surprised at how many people out there in law enforcement and the judicial system that are really, really open to reading about all this stuff and this is something that people have definitely been made fun of, even 10 years ago. And it's really amazing how many people are becoming open to this, whether they believe or not. They just find it fascinating. And I don't know. I can't say I have, any negative experiences with it yet. You get some people who just don't agree with you whatsoever, and that's completely okay with me. I'm not trying to persuade anybody to believe one thing or another, but I like hearing opinions, and I like hearing the reaction of people from the book and their thoughts on things. That's a very big part of my enjoyment in talking to people now, is listening to their thoughts and everything after reading the book.
Well, I love you guys, and I appreciate your friendship, and I hope you guys have a nice holiday. And thank you, Tim, for this great show.
You're welcome, Chris. Some of these days we'll have to have you back on the show.
And talk about your fantastic book. Surviving. Talk about a great written book. Wow. I mean,
it is. It's. I think that's one of the great books out there too. And boy, the company I'm in, you guys, you set the bar high for me, Mr. Fusco and Mr. DiCasare and Chip. You guys are very articulate gentlemen, and you definitely know your stuff. And I'm glad you shared it, because again, it just makes me think, and I love that. And part of the reason that I investigate the way I do is because of experiences people who have had, like Chris. And again, I take a psychological look at things, and some people can't get enough of the hauntings in their house and want their house to be haunted. Other people are scared to death. Right. And I think it's the not knowing what's there that bothers people the most. And I've had so many cases where people right off the bat are jumping to the conclusion that I have a demon here, and you got to get it out of here. It's going to hurt us. It's going to kill us. And you find out, it's this little child that's there, or somebody's grandmother, and there's a huge difference between what people think is there and what may actually be there, if anything. And I love looking at the psychological look at that. Chris didn't have really the ability just to pull up the internet and call out a team to help him, and he had to go through this himself with a great group of friends. And for all intents and purposes, they did paranormal investigating back then, and just did a tremendous job of documenting everything. And Chris went through this process of having something in his mind of what was, and then finding out what is. And it's one of the great stories out there. But that's why I wanted to get into the resolution type cases, where we have great guys like Dave Roundtree and Thomas Fusco working on the scientific part of it. I love to take that scientific stuff so I could take it into places and document things for people. Unfortunately, I don't have the time or the finances behind me to be able to go out and conduct all these great scientific experiments. But I definitely love everything that they're doing and use it in my own work. And but as part of that, we want to study the clients too and try to help them out. So, Chris, thank you. You have a great Christmas and New Year, and you're an inspiration for me and for what I do too. So just know that.
Yeah, for both of us, brother. Thank you so much for calling in.
Yeah, you all three are inspirations to me, and Thomas Fusco. I love having friends on this show. I love meeting new people in the paranormal field. It's been a great journey for me, and I want to thank everybody that's became my friend during this journey.
We thank you for being such a good guy in the realm. We need more good guys.
Yeah, we do. I agree.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'm really coming to find. For the most part, the majority of people in this field are super, super nice people, all compassionate. They all want to learn more, and working towards a common goal. It's really, really nice to have that kind of environment after having to watch the news and read the newspapers so much with all the negativity. It's a nice break from reality, if you will.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. Even the entertainment now with reality TV is negative. They're almost teaching people that rude behavior is interesting.
Or it's okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Or being unfairly competitive is the way to get things done now. It's really setting all the wrong standards. And we don't have a moral to the story at the end of these episodes. There's no real moral compass anymore. And it makes Mark's job a little tougher, but it also, makes it tougher to find the good and the good things in the world as well. And that's why it's so refreshing to see such benevolence and such kindness from Mark, from Tim, from Chris DiCasare, and Thomas Fusco. I just love to see good people getting together and teaching well. And there's a lot of good books that have come out of this, including Thomas Fusco's, by the way, Behind the Cosmic Veil. Very, very good.
Excellent book. Cannot recommend it enough. Wonderful, wonderful book. And just to expand on something he said before and what you're talking about now, Chip, that, we're dealing with something, a realm, a field that can be manipulated. Mm-hmm. I think the same thing goes with all these television shows that are out there now. And, it only takes one person to be thinking in a certain way because of them, and that spreads. I mean, this is my belief, but I believe it. I think, physicists are starting to show this as well, that, just like the ghost effect, it could spread. We know from physics that if you just merely observe some experiments, that changes the outcome. And that same energy is in us. And if I'm out there, thinking something really crazy on a case, that can easily spread to someone who's with me. Now they're picking it up, and all of a sudden, we have this mass haunting going on and all this activity when it's really something very simple to explain. But people really have to stay grounded, and in a lot of instances, just use some common sense.
Yeah, that's another kind of rare thing.
For sure. I want to say thank you to Chris for calling in. I wish him and his family a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year if I don't get to talk to him beforehand.
Oh, yeah, us too. Terry and I and Veronica all wish Chris a very happy holiday. It's thrilling to have him call. It's a beautiful thing. He's such a great guy.
Absolutely. Happy Hanukkah to all our Jewish friends out there.
Yes.
Well, guys, we have till 8 o'clock. I have the server till 9, possibly if need be. But it's been an awesome over almost an hour and a half here. And I think we're going to go ahead and take a little break here, and maybe we'll take some calls or continue our discussion about both of your books as well.
Awesome.
Sounds great.
All right. You've been listening to the Supernatural Realm on the Z-Talk Radio Network with Mark Keyes, Chip Reichanthal, and host Timothy Roxbury. We'll be right back right after this.
Are you sitting out there lonely and feeling left out? Do you want to be included in the world of the paranormal, but really don't know how? We have the paranormal solution for you. Call us at 1-800-RENT-A-GHOST. We can deliver everything from a timid spirit that walks the halls or one that simply opens a cabinet door. Or you can get a feisty poltergeist that can trash your house and really liven things up. We can get you as many shadow people as you need to have a party. Do you have too many unwanted friends or family just barging in? Our screaming and wailing banshee will guarantee that after hearing some deafening anguish, they will never return. Impress your friends or take revenge with a specter of death hovering over your dinner table or theirs. Or if you're lonely, you might like a simple attachment that follows you everywhere. EVPs? Choose from our line of celebrity voices. What investigator would not want to hear Jim Morrison or Whitney Houston? Or maybe Michael Jackson or Kurt Cobain? Order now and get 3 free orbs. We are 1-800-RENT-A-GHOST. Not responsible for damage caused by poltergeist activity, divorce, loss of job, sleep deprivation, bedwetting, uncontrolled vomiting, suicide, or the possibility of being hospitalized for insanity. And most important, there will be no returns.
Can I help you? Excuse me, hi. I wanted to find out about the Unlimited for Life guarantee.
Sure. Sprint is guaranteeing unlimited talk, text, and data for life.
Cool. And what if, say, technically you were not alive? Like, maybe you were undead?
Like a zombie.
Whoa, let's not go putting labels on people. I'm a zombie.
Unlimited from Sprint. It's guaranteed for life. Now for only $80 a month.
And welcome back to the Supernatural Realm, right here on the Z-Talk Radio Network. So that was Edwin Becker's commercial, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah, he sent me that about a year ago or so, and I don't play it very often, but I decided tonight it'd be okay to play it.
Sure.
So, Chip, let me see if do you have any questions or anything? Gotta find my notes here.
Well, actually, there was one from the chat room earlier that I think would be an intriguing question for both Mark and I, and I'm sure we'll have different viewpoints on this about demons and what we think that demons are or may be. And, of course, I'd like to ask Mark first.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. I touch briefly on that subject in the book. And another thing that I happened to observe doing investigations was that demon is kind of a general term thrown out there a lot of times. And a lot of times it comes down to semantics. But there's a lot of people, depending on their faith, their background, believe that everything is a demon if you have a haunting going on.
Oh yeah,
and it's really tough. We try to work with a lot of different faiths and whatever their belief system is, that's fine. We go in there just to try to determine what's there, and if it becomes an issue where somebody is adamant they have a demon, but we feel it's just a human based spirit, we just leave it at, listen, is it negatively impacting you, or is it neutral or positive? So we look at it that way, and we just leave titles out of it. But it really comes down to many times just a person's faith. We've done a lot of cases, and there's a lot of viewpoints, and I got to be honest, I'm not quite sure I've made up my mind on the subject yet about that. I can say I haven't gone into a home where I'm convinced that there is a vicious demon in a home, and just talking to so many people who claim they deal with basically demons, there could be just different levels, just like anything else, where you might have something just so minute there that somebody feels it's a demon, but all it's doing is causing fatigue on somebody. Where in my head I hear demon and I think, okay, this is causing some major physical issues for somebody, tearing them up, causing havoc in the home. But I just haven't seen it. Again, working with mediums, Virginia Centrillo, who's our medium, has done this work professionally for over 40 years. To her, she's only come across what she considered a demon maybe twice out of 40 years. Again, for me, if somebody has a demon there, I've talked to people who said a demon can be attached to a home, not necessarily a person, although I think it's a person that would have to get it into the home to begin with. I think it's more of a personal thing per person, where you could have, as the saying goes, your own demons, and you may have some issues you're working with, and, there's people who've had exorcisms several times, and it just doesn't seem to work. But to me, again, looking at it psychologically, there might be just such a great entanglement with the person who this demon may be attached to, that they're the person who needs to untangle themselves by whatever, means they can, whether it's therapy or counseling, whatever. That attachment may not break until that person heals themselves, and it's that thing that's wrong that's connecting the two. But I don't want to say I'm a disbeliever. To me, from my experiences, if there are demons, I think it's more on a spiritual level, if that makes sense, where a person may be psychically connected to something, not necessarily in the physical realm. I'm sure there's other people out there who would say, no, I've witnessed some really nasty stuff in here. But again, the only thing I have to go on, I'm not a medium. I work with mediums, that they've said that even our nastiest cases have been human-based spirits that are just nasty, nasty people. You know, they're bad when they're alive, they're bad now, and they stay here for whatever reason, and they're just causing all kinds of havoc. But, you know, again, if going from the Christian faith, you know, going from life, there's always a negative to a positive. Mm-hmm. You know, if there's angels and you believe in angels, you kind of got to believe that there's something on the other side as well. So I'm going to leave it right now that I'm still open to it, but quite unsure of what my answer to that is. I haven't seen enough to convince me that they are inhabiting homes physically. You know, my best judgment would that they would be connected to somebody more psychically than anything.
Right. I believe that, you know, infestation, demonic infestation is something that's rare. I don't know if either one of you have read the book written by Bob Kremer, The Demon of Brownsville Road, but I was talking with Bob Jr. here a couple of days ago. Actually, I seen it on his Facebook wall, where their story might be a TV show on a haunting, which I think is good for the family. It helps, you know, get their story out there, get people be more familiar and to learn about, you know, that infestation is possible, though it's not, you know, doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah.
I will, if I could just respond real quick, Chip. You know, one thing I will respond on is I think there's a difference, too, between what might be considered a negative energy or lower energy as opposed to a demon as well. I mean, typically, if you're talking a demon, I think people think something has come out of hell and it's just there to wreak havoc. You know, if you look even at a shamanic practice, there are other energies out there that are considered lower energies or maybe even negative energies that wouldn't necessarily be classified as a demon, you know, out of hell or sent by Satan or something like that. But they're out there. They're more animalistic than anything else. It's like running into a you know, kind of a wild wolf out in nature, maybe, where it's kind of like that. But working with the mediums again, they have come across things that, you know, they would call lower energies or, you know, dark energy, negative energy, but they haven't classified it as a demon. And so again, I just wanted to separate that and kind of my view. And you know, it's without having those abilities or being on the other side, I just can't really say for certain.
I guess none of us really do know what is on the other side. I know there's some people that have had near-death experience and things like that, but, you know, do we really know? No, I don't really think we do. We really do know what's on the other side.
Well, I'd just like to interject, since the question was given to all three of us. And look, I'm the guy who speaks for the good side of things, you know. I did have a past attuned as a medium and saw a lot of very benevolent things. I saw a lot of very loving things and loving people that those that were infused with religious belief would accuse of horrid things, you know, and you have to really go back to history and good and evil, you know, to give that any real due. I mean, I think there's no curse without a belief in curses, you know. So, and even though I am aware that there are a lot of negative energies out there, I also strictly believe that there are a lot of not negative things that have been blamed for being negative. And a lot of those things should be removed from the mix. To hear Mark Kais answer the question about demons by saying, you know, I'm really hesitant to believe that. This is a guy that works in law enforcement and sees some particularly horrid things that, you know, the everyday guy like me, for example, wouldn't be able to handle well or process well, you know. I'm the guy that runs out of a burning building, not into it. And that's why, you know, I look up to the services of you guys that do that. But with that said, you know, there's also energy. I mean, you know, light and dark for years have been attributed human traits, good and evil. I've never met a person that was pure evil, either living or dead. But the dead that I dealt with back in the day when I was doing that were just the same as they were in life, And a lot of times they may be pranksters or tease a little bit.
Hello.
Oh, hey.
Thomas.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Welcome.
I was just in a process of dialing the number on Skype, and then Chip gave me an invitation on the Skype there. So this is what we're on now.
Outstanding. Welcome, brother.
Good evening.
Hi. How are you guys?
We're awesome.
Good.
All right.
I'll say something to follow up with Chip that'll maybe bend everybody's brain here, where there's a lot of theory out there that if you think something, you have to think something before you can physically create it. And as you're thinking something, it can be manifested in a non-local realm, if you will, before it can be manifested here. So, I think with the creation of Christianity, demons were created. There's a lot of religions that don't believe in demons, but, is it possible that a culture, if it focuses on demons so much, could actually create something in a non-local space somewhere?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll address that directly by talking about mental illness very briefly, because there were these primitive tribes that we thought were so backwards because, we used the word primitive to describe them. But somebody would have a bout of psychosis, something they would call running amok. And their behaviors in these primitive tribes were not assessed to the individual. They were blamed on some negative entity or evil spirit. Mm-hmm. The entire community would come together under the leadership of a medicine man or shaman, as Mark mentioned earlier, and the entire community would get together to exorcise this entity away from the individual. And here we have a case of psychotic behavior, something that we would attribute to schizophrenia, or something similar to that. And in these primitive tribes, they can actually cure psychotic disorders, oftentimes in less than a month's time, and they have a cure ratio of something like 80%. Here in the United States, where if we think there's something wrong with us, we have to go see somebody who's likely, at least in our own mind, smarter than we are, to give us, assign us a label or diagnosis that will tell us exactly what's wrong with us, which feeds the idea, kind of like the ghost effect, that there must be something wrong with us. We have to be wrong. And in this country, there is a cure ratio for psychotic disorders of 7%, oftentimes in a period of 27 years or longer. And it's all because of the belief systems. And again, we go back to demons. And now we have Thomas on, we can get all scientific. I'd like to think on a quantum level, perhaps, just as there are particles, there are antiparticles. There's matter and there's antimatter, gravity and anti-gravity. And maybe some of this dark energy that we don't know anything about may have something to do with taking some residual kind of energy where our consciousness may actually affect matter somehow, just as we see a particle or a wave if we're there. And maybe there is something anti-energy or dark energy that is splitting the good characteristics from the bad characteristics of if there is a spiritual element in a room or something to that effect.
Thomas?
I've been blinded by science.
I could play that for you.
Good answer.
Yeah, Thomas Dolby.
Dig that one up, man. Play it during the break or something.
I will. I will definitely.
I love that tune, man.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, Thomas Dolby, awesome.
Thomas, your thoughts on what Mark and Chip have just said?
Well, I got a few of them. Obviously, and state the obvious, but first of all, when it comes to
mental illness, hallucination, these kinds of things. Here's where I argue for the field of physics to own up to their responsibility to study everything physical. So if you, let's say people say, well, it's in your imagination. Okay. And from a psychological point of view, even a spiritual point of view, there's a certain way to perceive that. But from physics, we would have to say that, if we were going to define the imagination, for example, we would have to consider it to be part of the physical brain. And therefore, rather than looking at it from a psychological standpoint, we would call how would we say it? We would call the imagination the imaging faculty.
Ooh.
And so that everything would be imaged in that particular faculty in the human brain. And being part of the human brain, that it must be part of physical reality. So that thoughts are real things. And images that people imagine, if somebody says, well, you're hallucinating, well, that hallucination is real on some level. If we can take something that we can imagine and sketch it out on a piece of paper, well, that means that information has a physical source for it to be able to reach a physical destination on a piece of paper. So certainly physics, not just science in general, but physics, when a physicist becomes bold enough to venture outside of his normal confines in his studies and start to look at other things, gives us a very different perspective on what may be going on, and kind of gives us somewhat of a handle on things. If you've read my book, you know what my feelings are on good and evil, that they are human terminology that is used to describe something which is in fact a greater influence. That good and evil are names that we, from a human perspective and a human scale, place on something that has far greater consequences. And as you may know, I argue for what I've begun to call it a three-state model of reality, so that we're dealing with not only in modern physics, it deals with this two-state reality, which is the quantum state and the relativistic state, which we might call the micro and the macro state. I argue for a three-state reality, which also includes a non-physical component, or what I call the supergeometric state. And so when we look at it this way, it kind of helps us, just like with the idea with the brain and the imaging faculty, it helps us get more of a mental grasp on what's actually happening on the quantum level. Whereas we don't have this dichotomy anymore, but the quantum level in a three-state model becomes a transitional state between something non-physical and something fully materialized. It is in the process of materializing. And so consequently, that would explain a lot of the quirky, weird things that we see in the quantum realm. But to get back to the good and evil, what I'm trying to get at is that in order for a universe to be physical, it has to have differences. It has to have dimensions. Everything that is physical is dimensional. And dimensions, as we know, Einstein told us, taught us about space-time, that the fabric of space-time is a substantive field characterized by four independent variables. That sentence is you have to sit and think about that for a while and think of every word, and then you go, oh yeah, all right, I get it. Because, Einstein is like, if you've read his work, oftentimes his sentences, well, it's like what Jerome said about Paul, that every sentence is a peal of thunder. But what he's saying is that everything is an expression of differences. So with the spatial dimensions, height, width, and depth, we have differences between here and there. This is my stupid, simple way of explaining it so that I feel comfortable with it. So the spatial dimensions are expressions of differences between here and there. And temporal dimensions are expressions of differences between then and now.
Mm-hmm. And how many dimensions do you feel there are, personally?
4. So I don't go for the string theory stuff.
Oh, thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. Thank you. And there's a couple reasons for it. Primarily, believe it or not, and this is one of the what I call sometimes the trade secrets when we're dealing with mainstream academia, that string theory is dependent. All string theory is dependent on the existence of a theoretical particle known as a graviton. Uh-huh. And without a graviton, string theory kind of falls apart. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Plus, it's an attempt to shoehorn all observable phenomena into a strictly material model, which is why none of these elaborate schemes ever truly work. They sound great. Oh, this answers this part and this part, but this also introduces this problem and this mystery and this paradox, and none of them ever hit the target. Mm-hmm. And my explanation is simple. We're dealing with a reality of which the physical or the material is only a piece of it, whereas mainstream physics accepts that they're synonymous, that reality is physical and physical is reality, and there's nothing outside of it. Right. But this universe had to come from somewhere, and if we're dealing with something outside the physical, we are dealing with something that is adimensional, mm-hmm. or perhaps we might say pre-dimensional. Mm-hmm. And therefore, if we don't have any differences, how can the differences of the physical universe arise from it? Even in astrophysics, where we have the Big Bang Theory, the physical universe was supposed to emerge from a singularity. And I understand that the general public doesn't really understand what that word means. And a lot of times when it is used, it's used incorrectly. Yeah. Singularity is a single coordinate. That's as simple as it means, is that everything is collapsed into a single coordinate. There is no past or present.
Right. No time or space. It's just boom.
It's just
or all time or space.
Yeah, there is no there and here.
So
everything is here and now.
So
and that's all there is.
So Thomas, so then why is Michio Kaku so hung up on this string theory thing?
You had to bring that cat up, man. He's using mental fishing string.
I never heard a bigger line of bullshit in my life than when I heard him.
Oh boy, physics. Physics is great with these very ambiguous and nebulous concepts, as long as they're pronounced by one of their own priesthood.
Oh, right, yeah, and anything outside of that is condemned without even a thought.
In a lot of instances, yes.
Yeah, my father's best friend was Ralph Alpher, and he was one of the bigger guys behind the Big Bang Theory. As part of his doctoral thesis, long ago, and this guy was at our wedding, and and it's kind of neat. And when he first tried to explain it to me, before I was, I was like a sophomore in high school at the time, and and I said, So nothing, blew up to become everything, and that's the best you got. And he actually explained it to me in a way that made better sense. But on the face of it, that's really what they're dealing with, and thank God for Einstein. He came along and made sense out of a lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah, Einstein discovered what the substance of the universe truly was. And that's important to note because Einstein focused on the raw clay of physical reality. But Einstein never addressed the form.
True.
He never addressed the structure.
Yeah.
And of course, from his perspective, he didn't have to. My goodness. Just his substance was enough. But, excuse me, to get to my point, if we are dealing with something that is not physical, then we are dealing with something that the only influence, and I use influence because the word energy is tossed around so much to where in the common language it's actually lost its true meaning. Nobody realizes when somebody's speaking of energy what that is.
Yeah.
We're dealing with influences that would be absolute, infinite and absolute, values that anything in the physical universe can't have.
Right.
So how do differences emerge from absolutes? And my only answer, and the only obvious answer, is that you have to have opposite absolutes.
Right.
And when they come in contact with one another, when these influence intermesh, then you get conflict. And conflict, in terms, creates differences.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it is the differences, it is those differences, what I call diffluential waves, from which the clay, the substance of physical reality, actually emerges. And so if we're going to talk about information, which, as you guys know, I always shout about being one of the most ignored subjects in the field of paranormal and even in science. Because we look at an apparition, everybody talks about energies and spirits and this and that. But what is it really? Physically, again, relating it to like what is the imaging faculty in the human brain. An apparition is a materialization of information. That's what it is, because without the information, you wouldn't have a recognizable pattern.
Right.
So in that materialization process, what we're seeing, in my opinion, are two absolutes that are in conflict with one another. And within the body, the data of information, the database of information for the universe, which is what supergeometry refers to, we have areas of that information that are coherent and organized and intelligent. And so to me, such a thing as a demon can actually exist, because it would represent that absolute that seeks to create disorder.
Right. And from chaos comes order, ultimately, I guess.
Well, if you look at it from a point of view where what I'm talking about it's the interaction between these two absolutes that creates the substance of reality. We wouldn't say necessarily that order, that chaos creates order, but that chaos fights against the order. So, here we have a situation, for example, how many billions of years ago, whatever, geologists would say, that we have this wet ball of rock, dirt, floating into space. And suddenly, spontaneously, some kind of mold begins to grow on it. I'm talking about the Earth, because really, if you look at it from far enough beyond, you're looking at a dirty, wet ball with mold growing on it and microbes running around the mold. That's pretty much what it is. And so for that organization, which any living thing is a highly organized and dynamic collection of information, that has to emerge from somewhere. And so built into our universe is a code, so to speak. And it can be called by many different names, that actually leads to this materialization of highly coherent patterns of information that result in life. Now, on the other side, we also have this other influence that its goal is to destroy that, is to break it down, is to bring it back to a level of the most probable state of the universe, which is total disorder. According to our understanding of physical principles, there should be no orders or structures in a universe at all, because the most probable state of the physical universe is total chaos. That we have ordered structures in it is completely, highly improbable. So these two things work against each other. If we were going to translate that religiously, let's say from a Judeo-Christian point of view, and of course Judeo-Christianity is by no means alone in looking at it this way, we are seeing spiritual forces, for lack of a better word, that represent both light and death. And so they fight against each other. And this is the battle. I mean, this is why we have to keep reproducing to maintain life, because the influence of death will eventually destroy the order that's in the living body.
Thomas, would it be safe to say that one cannot exist without the other? Good cannot exist without evil, or vice versa?
The physical can't exist without both.
Right. Okay.
But I believe either one can exist independently of the other in the what Charles Fort would have called the positive and the negative absolutes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you mentioned...
If I could,
go ahead, Mark.
If I could just ask the question really quick. When you're talking about an infinite point, positive, and another one negative, and they're putting out a wave of information, see that I have this concept sort of right. When these two waves collide, if you will, if you could think of one just for the sake of conversation, one on the right, one on the left, and a wave coming from each moving towards each other, where these waves intersect, I just assume that they would slow down to get to a frequency, maybe, that would create a physical being or object.
Yes, in my model, which you know about because you read my book, that this conflict, this what I call this primal conflict between these two opposing absolutes, creates this type of a pre-dimensional wave. And I believe that we already have mathematics to describe some of them. That when in quantum physics, when we're using formulas to calculate a probable outcome of a quantum process, we use what's called a wave function formula. And when that wave function collapses, we can determine an outcome to a particular quantum process. They've always been looked at as mathematical hypotheticals, as tools. But I believe that they're real, that they actually represent something that's a component of reality. But yes, excuse me, our uppermost limit to the physical universe is not a place, it's a velocity. The uppermost barrier of the physical universe is the speed of light. So if we have something beyond the physical, we have something that's beyond luminosity, beyond light speed. And if we have this pre-physical waves of conflict, and again, I'm using the term waves very loosely because that's a physical term. We just lack the terminology to talk about some of these things. As that conflict intensifies, we should see a densification or a deceleration of this flow of duality, this flow of waves. And if that decelerated to the speed of light, it would immediately begin to unfold as physical reality. It would materialize because it's reached luminosity. According to my model, according to the conventional model in academia, the singularity from which the universe emerged evaporated into the physical universe. My model maintains that the singularity is still there and that reality is still continuing to emerge from it. And so this is I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's very interesting. The way I've often described death to people and, possibly where a soul might go or a part of you that is that information may go after death, basically is just like you were saying, it's not necessarily aware, but it's a frequency that I've explained it as, where depending on your body, your health, your mental disposition, how good of a person you were in life, let's say, all impacts your personal vibration, where when you die, like attracts like, where you might go to a higher frequency. However, explaining some of the lower frequencies and the negative point, someone dies would go to that lower frequency. And that could often explain why in a home you might have, say, two spirits that don't know each other are there, because just like a radio station, they're on two different frequencies. Does that make sense? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we have to be careful again with our terminology. This is when, Tim, when you interjected the thing with Dr. Kaku earlier. This is one of the things that he talks about, and he knows it's nonsense. He knows it's nonsense. His training would tell him so. This idea, for example, that we have these parallel universes that just operate at a different frequency. And it's like being on a different channel on a radio. Unfortunately, there is really nothing that's anywhere near the simplest of form that has a quote-unquote frequency. It is a myriad of frequencies.
Right.
And so consequently, when you say something occurs at a different frequency, that's so tiny compared to what's actually going on in the physical that to somebody like me, it becomes completely irrelevant. To some who is, trained in physics, would say, oh boy, here we go into the feathery realms again. We're certainly not dealing with a single frequency. And as far as the fabric of space-time, this is another thing that's important to understand. Within the fabric of space-time, and understand, according to Einstein and what our experiments and researches and math tells us, is that we have this background, this scaffolding of space-time. Einstein liked to call it a fabric, in which is embroidered or woven every component in physical reality, including frequency and amplitude. So therefore, if it's physical, then all possible frequencies occur in that same singular state. So if we were going to say, well, there's another universe on a different frequency, well, then it couldn't be in space-time.
Right.
It would be some different type of a fabric. And if so, there would be no way for it to intersect with a different fabric. It would be like, it would be dissonance. All you would get is static and nonsense. And this is why Kaku knows what he's talking about is a bunch of malarkey. But it sells cornflakes. So while these things occur, what you're saying occurs, the frequency aspect of it just isn't workable. Mm-hmm. We need to come up with a different way of talking about that so that it makes sense and it's scientifically relevant. so much in the alternative fields has.
And I'm not sure exactly how to word that properly, but if maybe we use the word spectrum, or let me just ask a direct question. Do you think when a person dies, if his soul does go somewhere, every soul ends up in the same place, or could it end up on a different part of a spectrum between your positive and negative field?
I think that what we're talking about is oh boy, how would I explain this? I got the diagrams in the book and all that. It's very easy to see. If my model is correct, what we have is we don't have a quantized universe as conventional physics call it. We actually have a stratified universe. And so the higher the velocity that we have, the higher the stratum of space-time that we're occupying. However, it's all in space-time. For me, according to supergeometrics, in order for a soul, so to speak, to be maintained after the body is destroyed, it literally has to pass out of space-time. There is no way that a soul can exist within space-time and not be subject to destruction and decay. Now, we know at the beginning of the universe that all of the informational patterns that were to emerge as the fabric of space-time as elementary particles like leptons and photons and quarks, all the various elementary particles, that those blueprints for those things came from somewhere. They came from the singularity. The singularity existed independently of space-time. And the singularity is infinite. There is no starting point, and there's no finishing point for it. Mathematically, it has a value of infinity. So, consequently, for that information to emerge as a human being, for example, when that body dies and decays, that information needs to pass outside of space-time, or it too will be decayed and broke down. So I think we're not talking about different layers, so to speak, or levels of physical reality. We're talking about actually exiting physical reality. Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask you real quick. If to add to this whole conversation, if you think that there is any possibility that consciousness, either collective or individual, can be manifested as an energy form.
No. Although I may not understand your question entirely, because we are dealing with something where common terminology we struggle with because it isn't out there. I'll explain to you what I think about that, and then you tell me if that's along what you're talking about.
Fair enough, brother.
All right. Energy, as it is conveyed or propagated, has a frequency and an amplitude, which can carry information. So does the information necessarily, let's say we have a television broadcast from a broadcast tower. Mm-hmm. We have a carrier frequency that is being propagated from that tower. Mm-hmm. But the television program, the information is being carried on the wave as modulation. So does the tower generate the TV show? Well, in a sense. Consciousness itself probably doesn't generate the propagating electromagnetic field, the electromagnetic wave. But the consciousness is a collection of coherent information that can be carried as modulations on that wave. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I'm thinking, because when you talk about a singularity, and if I think of consciousness, there's this thing called the Akashic Record, which is basically kind of the singularity of consciousness. And so, I mean, even though it's not carried through microwave signals like the TV broadcast might be, which is based on electromagnetics, it still seems that like telepathic or psychokinetic communications seem to allow us to somehow manifest things or change matter, So I'm just wondering, because the quantum physics really hasn't dealt with it and kind of rejects it simply. And since we have such an articulate voice here, I'm just wondering if there is any way you think it could be somehow kind of an energy source or somehow fit into your super geometric model.
Well, if we're talking about parapsychology, things like telepathy, remote viewing, those kinds of things. What we're actually talking about is the transmission of information from one location to the other, but in a manner that apparently is not physical.
Okay.
All right. So if you were remote viewing something halfway around the world and you were seeing it in real time, there is no physical medium that could transmit it to you that quickly.
That answers my question.
Yes.
Really, when you put it like that, but it's probably part of our information spectrum. You had a word for it there, where our brains make sense of things.
The imaging faculty.
Thank you.
Yes. What I talk about with this body of information that exists independently of the physical and above the physical is not a new idea. It goes back a long, long way. I've just rephrased it and then put it in a context of a greater model where it's never really been done before. David Bohm, one of the most prominent physicists of the 20th century, not fringe or quack by any means, he understood it as being what he called implicate order.
Okay.
And he said implicate order was not physical, but gave rise to the explicate order of physical reality. That's the way he understood it. Plato called it forms. If we go to the Bible, we see the Old Testament calls it the wisdom of God, the mind of God. God created the raw clay of the universe. He created the heavens and the earth, and it was void and formless. In another place, it says God made the universe out of formless matter. Again, it was clay, but there was no structure. And then God spoke the word light, which is a coherent pattern of information. And the clay materialized as that pattern. In the New Testament, it's called the Word of God. Edgar Casey called it the Akasha. David Finkelstein calls it coherent superpositions. John Wheeler, physicist John Wheeler, again, when I mentioned Finkelstein and Wheeler, these guys are monsters in mainstream academia. They're not cacos and they're not fringe. Right. He called it pre-geometry. And so we have this body of information that can be materialized into physical reality. And so what we have, and again, this idea of materialization of information allows us to look at things in a different way than we were able to before. So let's take a remote viewing situation where information that is intricate to a remote location comes into our brain. I say that it is transmitted non-physically. It's transmitted above and beyond space and time. But as soon as it gets into our brain, it begins to materialize into physical reality. And that's one of the unique qualities of the human brain, that within the human brain, we see the materialization of information in real time. That's one of the few places we see it. Paranormal phenomena is another place we see it. So we know from looking at the brain physically that we can see electrochemical changes and certain patterns that take place with certain thoughts. So when the information comes into the brain, it materializes it as an electrochemical pattern. Mm-hmm. And you might actually look at that. If we were to compare that to the paranormal field, we would say that electrochemical pattern is the apparition of the information.
Oh, wow. What a neat way to put it.
This is actually one of the questions I was just about to ask you. When you have a materialization of information in the form of a perceived ghost, do you believe that it's bypassing a person's eyes and going right into that
electrochemical
reaction there? Because you could have someone standing to your left saying, there's a man standing right there. Look, he's right there. And two people just to the right are saying, I don't see anybody at all.
Yes.
What are your thoughts? I mean, to me, I don't believe the eyes are necessarily involved with seeing ghosts.
The holographic principle.
If we are to accept the possibility, and I consider it a reality, that photographs, legitimate photographs of apparitions have been taken, and they actually do exist. What we're looking at then is a conveyance as a modulation. This is where we are wounded so seriously in the paranormal field because so few people are scientifically trained. What is sight? What is it? We have a compression, electromagnetic compression wave, which is what light is. Light is electromagnetism. And coming from a source with modulations in it that carry information that enter into our eyes and are sensed by our rods and cones, and the information then is translated in the brain itself as a coherent pattern that's recognizable. So with a photograph, you have the same thing. You have this compression wave carrying information, entering through the lens of a camera, and then being recorded on its film or whatever recording device it is. Today they don't use film, but it's the same kind of idea, which means that apparition is physical.
Yeah, it does, especially under that. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Now, can that information be directly materialized in the human brain? Sure. The human brain is an arena of materialization of information.
Yeah. And we're only using a fraction of its capability.
For me, I say the three most common places, because most of the universe is fully materialized. I equate it to standing on the side of a highway, superhighway, and looking at cars whizzing by on asphalt roads at 75 miles an hour. It is a transportation system in a state of full materialization. And this is how we view reality, most of reality. We don't get to see all the processes that came about from the mining of the iron to the putting together of the synthetic chemicals to the asphalt contractor that came out and paved it. We don't get to see any of those processes. We see it in full materialization, which is why mainstream physics says this is reality. But there's three areas where I say that we actually see information from the non-physical being materialized in the physical in real time. The human brain is one of them. Quantum physics is another. And the third is paranormal phenomena.
Wow.
This is why the paranormal is so important to understanding the way the universe is put together. I say that physics will never come up with a theory of everything until they reckon with paranormal phenomena. Wow. Now, I just might add real quick is that this is a true scientific theory, because one of the things that a scientific theory does, as opposed to other things that are called theories, and most of them that you've heard are really not, they're hypothesis at best, speculation, notion, fantasy, or philosophy at worst. is that if this process is correct, what I'm saying is that what we're going to have prior to the emergence of a paranormal event is a local expansion of space-time. That a bubble of space-time will form prior to the emergence of a paranormal effect. This actually has been experimentally confirmed by David Roundtree, that this actually takes place. So it predicts we're going to see gravitational fluctuations. We're going to see temporal dilation, time dilation, local to that event. We're going to see the emergence of electromagnetic fields out of midair. We're going to experience things like cold spots and heat signatures at the same location, which has always been a puzzle, a baffling phenomenon when it's observed in the paranormal by instrumentation. And so it turns out that this model predicts every type of event that is associated with the paranormal.
Wow.
And that's what makes Tommy a very interesting boy to talk.
Wow, yeah, we got to hang out sometime. All I can think of is, the four of us have got to get together and have a party, It'll be the most fascinating, interesting party in the world.
And we could play Blinded by Science.
Yeah, some Thomas and Europa we could talk to. That was another good song I had, too. Another good talk.
Well, I could tell. My brain hurts already, and I'm going to have some great dreams tonight. I can see it.
Oh, me too. No, I won't be able to sleep because mine's thinking now. I'm in overdrive. The weirdest thing, there's a video, and talk about the state of disbelief. It's from a supposed reptilian alien. It's like this 2.5 hour.
My bed?
No. Well, maybe because conceptually, anyway, it lives under the ground. It's from this earth, but he was talking about all these concepts in ways that we haven't caught up to yet. Maybe even science, and he used the term bubble to talk about ways that extraterrestrials travel from one area to the other. But he also said that the paranormal was part of this bubble, and in order to understand, where we need to go scientifically, we have to understand the paranormal. And, that made me believe the video because this thing, it said, and it mentioned foam instead of using words like dimensions or waves or layers. He used terms like bubbles and foam to kind of try to best explain away some of the stuff that we have yet to learn about. And I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, you know what? You're making this reptilian. You're making me proud because I'm watching this reptilian video, going, you know what? There's something to be said there. I'll have to send it to you. Oddly enough, because the physics, the quantum physics that he talks about, and the space time, and how these extraterrestrial beings can travel such far distances to get here. If we indeed believe even that. But I mean, the odds, that we're the only life form with all these planets and galaxies and everything else, considering it is not all holographic in the first place, is kind of a stunning thing. But we've got to hang out sometime.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I've in the last year or so, I'm beginning to see little bits and pieces of my work pop up in other people's work. And so, maybe the cat heard one of my interviews or something. Who knows?
Well, it's just not every day that, we have minds like yours that actually kind of go between, areas that normally don't correlate with each other. Quantum physics and the paranormal, for example, spirituality and physics and it's refreshing, and I'm bowing. I mean, we've got Mark Keyes and Thomas Fusco and on Tim's show. I mean, I'm in heaven.
All we need is Tesla, man.
It doesn't.
I know, right?
It doesn't get any better than this. I mean,
it really doesn't.
It can't.
Really doesn't.
But I'll tell you guys, the key is this: what I say is that the fundamental paradigm of the universe
and that is the capstone of the whole structure. What is the single sentence expression that we can use to define the universe? For me, I've come upon this, and I say the universe is an expression of materialized and materializing information. And to me, that is the fundamental paradigm of the universe. It's that one sentence simplicity that Einstein and many other physicists felt that we should be able to arrive at conceptually. Yeah. If you begin to look at the work that you're involved with, whether it's parapsychology or paranormal phenomena, if you begin to look at it with the understanding that when we have what I call a primary paranormal event, which is something that materializes in coherent form, like an apparition or an AVP or an EVP, that you're actually looking at the process of the materialization of information in local space in real time, and then the other effects, the secondary effects, that you look at it in a way that these are the environmental changes that are beginning to take place to set up the conditions necessary for that primary materialization to occur. The veil lifts.
Ooh.
And you can actually see what the hell is going on.
Yeah. I got to ask you also about, because this reptilian thing, I'm sorry to keep bringing it up.
Well, but Tim knows what I say about that. I say I want to write a book, the alien hybrid reptilian and the homosexual nuns who love them.
I would read that book, man. I'd be first in line to buy a copy of that. But he was just talking about plasma and this post-plasma process that kind of helps all this stuff kind of manifest on the way from
we're not talking about
information to materializing. I like plasma.
Are we talking about ghost hunters?
Right.
or that movie, Ghostbusters or something?
Oh, no. Well, plasma is just another state. When I was going to school many, many, many years ago.
Yeah, you and me both.
Of course, guys, remember, when I was going to school, one of the theories about the craters on the moon was that they were bubbles that emerged from the interior while the surface of the moon was still liquid, and that they cooled in space and broke and they popped, and that's what gave us the craters.
Oh, wow.
That's how old my education is. When I was in school, there were 3 states of matter. There were solid, liquid, and gas.
Liquid and gas, yeah.
Plasma was recognized later as a 4th state of matter. But we are still talking about something physical. We have to be careful. In fact, I painfully listen to a lot of people who are trying to talk about spiritual things. And they are so indoctrinated in the material paradigm that they wind up stumbling into material explanations, which are clearly not what they intend, but they lack any other kind of reference point other than what they were indoctrinated into. And so they start talking about spirits or energy, and energy can't be created or destroyed, which is why spirits can be eternal, because they're made of energy. They don't understand entropy. They don't get the idea that when our sun goes supernova, that all coherent patterns of energy will be destroyed and broken down into their basic constituents, which means that if they believe the spirits are eternal, then they cannot be made of energy.
All right. And not to mention the process of decay, too.
Yeah.
Some of the particles. Yep.
Yeah. So when I hear spirit energy, I hear an oxymoron like honest politician.
I think for the most part, it's the most common terminology that people understand what each other is talking about at this point.
Yes.
But,
absolutely.
Thomas, I do have to brag for a minute. Quite some time ago, when your book first came out, I made a prediction, and that prediction was that you'd be called upon to do some very large lectures, symposiums, and you'd be called upon. And I thought your theory was great because it was very testable. And frankly, I believed in what you were writing there. very close to my line of thinking, and that has happened. And not only have you been called on quite a bit, because you're really out there, but your theories have been tested, and they are being tested, and they're being proven right.
Yes.
Yeah, and 20 years from now and 100 years from now, they'll still be proven right.
Even in mainstream physics, some of the results that have been coming out of the CERN collider and other areas of investigation have been confirming what this model says. And so it's been very exciting. And you're right. And as Mark mentioned, guys, Mark, his show was my first interview that I gave ever.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Here, Paranormal Science. Good going.
However, it was not the first interview that was broadcast.
Oh.
Because, as you remember, Mark, you were pre-recording.
That's right.
The following week. And I actually had, like, the following Wednesday or something, have a live interview broadcast that broadcast before Mark's. But yes, Paranormal Science was the first one I gave. And I'm still very grateful, Mark, that you gave me that opportunity.
That's awesome.
That is.
Oh, it was my pleasure. And the book was just too fantastic not to have you on the show. It was just great. And me personally felt it needed to be out there. And, maybe the paranormal world's kind of a weird way to get it out there, but it certainly was extremely effective. And I think it stands up there to the best of any, physicist and their theories out there.
Yeah, and it also goes to very affirming of both you gentlemen, and how far we've all come since then.
Well,
yeah, we used to record that. We used to record the shows Monday morning, and they would air the following Sunday night. And so I had the honor of having you on, and there was a live interview right in between. So I'll take the credit for the for the first interview, and I thank you for that.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you. And, one of the issues, and there have been, Tim knows, because Tim and I have had some very deep and timely conversations. We occasionally talk on the phone and talk for quite a time. Tim knows some things and some intimate thoughts of mine that I do not publicize. But one of the discouragements that I, have acquired over these last several years, people don't realize, man, that, I came out of the closet November 2011. I've been only on the scene for about 3 years. Before that, I was a nobody from nowhere. But during that period of time, I've come to understand that a very, very tiny percentage of the paranormal community is actually genuinely interested in the science of it.
Very, very small.
Yeah, very. Yeah, true.
Very tiny. They may give it lip service, but when you talk to them, of course, they'll fall back on the traditional viewpoints. The spirits are draining energy in order to manifest. It's your dead Aunt Mary. Dead Aunt Mary moved the door. Dead Aunt Mary made the breeze flow. Those kind of things. And so it's been quite frustrating because, and not only that, moreover, I discovered a whole section, a whole segment of the paranormal community that looks at the kind of work I do as an enemy, as an opposing force. Because their involvement in the field and their beliefs and what they're in it for and what they're getting out of it, depends on the maintenance of paranormal phenomena as a mystery.
Yeah, and also helping to ramp up that fear mongering, which I think also helps really send a wrong message, and it's more about an adrenaline rush than it is about confronting a new world, Yeah,
the fear-mongering is what I call the ugly bug syndrome.
I like that term.
And this is what I'm referring to, is that when you were a kid and you grabbed a big bug. You know, and this was something that you were comfortable with and familiar with, and you brought it in and showed it to your mom.
Yeah.
And your mom screamed and yelled, and she got up on the chair and said, "Get that thing out of here." Not only did you find that you have mastery over something that the establishment doesn't, but you can use it to intimidate and frighten them. It is a source of power. And some people are in the paranormal field just to exercise that. You know, there's still kids bringing ugly bugs into their mom.
Right.
You know, and
So
you
well
know them
said.
when you see them. You know, you'll go to the website and you'll see the shaved heads with the devil tattoos and the flashlights under the chin. And you know, and it's like, no wonder all the scientists are running to the door.
Hey, Thomas. Or the glow-in-the-dark uniforms.
I don't know what to think about that.
Reflective glow-in-the-dark uniform.
Yeah. But, you know, it's kind of like what Mark has been saying really since the beginning of this entire interview, and how just things kind of seem to end up happening in almost magical ways, you know, or kind of a meant to be type of thing. I think also for you, if you've only really been on the, you know, coming into the front in 2011, you know, I think a lot of things had to happen to make the timing, you know, work so well. And because science has made leaps and bounds seemingly since 2011 in certain things that kind of become more and more common. So it's easier for you to get your message out to a wider stream of people. I think it's kind of a beautiful thing, you know, that it's all in the timing, and it's still going to be a while because of there is an ugly bug factor in quantum physics too, you know, in science and in engineering, and
there is. You're right.
And I say, God bless you, brother. I think it's a beautiful thing that you're here, and I think it's an even better thing that you're right here, right now, you know, with us.
All right, in real time.
Yeah,
in real time.
And you know, I think science is slowly creeping into taking a look at the paranormal world, and you know, it's going to take a little time, but it's getting there. I think they'll catch up, and you know, in a few years' time, they'll be looking at you.
Yeah, because by the time it does catch up, you know, you'll have already been there, you know.
Oh yeah, the problem that we have in physics today, and we've had it for some years now, is that physics is based on a materialistic model that every material effect has an equally material cause locally contained within the same space-time as the effect. And that's kind of a complex way of saying it, but in what we've run into in physics in recent years is that we have literally run out of physical causes to explain all the effects that we see.
So they can come up with strings and things.
Yeah, we've literally run out of physical causes. We've run out of material to explain all the effects. And so ultimately what I say is that mainstream physics today is in the age of denial.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
Where they are desperately crawling and scraping at anything that will help them to maintain the strictly material paradigm. Yeah. There's also a hidden agenda with this, too, is that, you know, when we accept a segment of reality beyond the physical, and that it actually contained intelligent information from which the universe emerged, that could be a death knell for postmodern relativism and for atheism.
Oh.
And since atheism dominates the world of modern physics today, not by a lot, but it does, it's over 50%, that these ideas that we're talking about are direct threats to that paradigm of the universe. And so there's also a religious battle.
Oh, yeah.
That's going on as well. So but eventually I think that as Mark, as you said, that the nut is slowly beginning to crack.
It has to.
Yeah. And so at that point in time, and in our field, or I should say in your field, because really I'm not a real full part of the paranormal community.
We're running out of gadgets, Tom.
Yeah, well, that's true too. Yes,
there is that.
I get better results with Everetti's when I talk to my flashlight. Yes. But and that's just to sell cornflakes. That's all that is. But, one of the things that I think will be necessary in this field is for the plumbers to go bye-bye. And, they come in, they did their thing, it's like, all right, they came in, you called them in, they fixed your sink, they fixed your toilet. That's fine, But I'm sorry, with your crappy hands and the crack showing out of the back of your pants, you're not staying for dinner. You've done your thing, now go home. And once they go, then everybody will know this is the beginning of the end of the fad, the populist thing with the paranormal. And that kind of has to fade away. And that's going to leave a vacuum in that field. Mm-hmm. Certainly David Roundtree, involved in this new show produced by Nick Groff, Ghost Stalkers, is bringing that kind of science on television sets as a way of it's almost like a transitional show. Mm-hmm. And so, when that fad goes, there's going to be a vacuum remaining. And I believe at that point in time, that will be the place where science will capture the public imagination. Because that's what's important. None of these shows would survive if they were just watched by the paranormal community.
True.
They're being watched by the general public at large. And it's just like, we do. My wife and I like to see the shows that you're on, Mark, that particular kind of show. Mm-hmm. We don't watch we call it the Screwballs, Ghost Adventures. We don't watch those guys. We don't watch the plumbers. Mm-hmm. But when science has long since passed in our culture as being a fad. Yeah. It is now mainstream. Yeah. So when we're able to make that tie together, and that's going to be very important, when people understand that when we crack the physics of the paranormal, the types of technology that we could build based on those principles is mind-boggling. Oh, sure. That's the carrot, guys.
Yeah.
That's the carrot.
Yeah, and because it goes to feed other realms, too.
One comment I'd like to make on that. We are investigating an unprecedented amount of cases where we're finding children are very, very open and seeing and feeling and experiencing a lot of things. And these kids are going to grow up knowing that and getting into some of these fields. And I think they have the biggest chance of blending science and spirituality together.
Yeah, because they're the ones playing with the ugly bugs, right?
Mm-hmm. We have
some of them maybe, but Mark, I believe you're right. It's next generation. I think truly modern paranormal research, in my opinion, and others may differ, actually dates back to Dr. Moss's parapsychology lab over at UCLA in the 60s.
Nice.
Barry Taft came out of that. And so that's really what started the modern paranormal age, in my opinion. And, they're all gone, for the most part. Taft is still around, but a lot of them are gone now. Mm-hmm. We have, a successive generation. Right now we have a generation that's been, weaned on this, these populist TV shows.
All right.
And when that subsides, we do have a next generation coming up. And what's so important is that we try to convey what we're talking about in scientifically meaningful ways. And this is going to catch their attention because, gook and spook stories are perennial. That's what I call them, gook and spook stories. I know. I got ways of saying things. People say, "Oh God, that cat!" I get into stuff with that. But the gook and spook stories are the old entertainment, and that ultimately is what the public sees the paranormal as being.
Yeah, it really did. It's a horror film transposed to TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that I'm seeing right now, I think we're going to see a transition here because there's so many shows out there right now. The market's just saturated. It has been for a long time, and it's basically redundant. We have investigators going out there.
It is.
They're
general public is smarter than that.
So the public now, I think, is at a point. Okay, yeah, ghosts are mainstream now. Ghost hunting is mainstream. Okay, we got a general idea of what the evidence is. People are going to start asking other questions. They are.
They're smart.
Why is this happening? Okay, yeah, we know it happens, but how's that possible?Ell us why. They're going to start asking questions. So I think you're going to see a little change in broadcasting if this trend continues. I think this is going to wean off TV anyway. You have police shows, you have emergency room shows, lawyer shows, paranormal shows, and it's going to cycle. But I think you're going to see a change in the style of broadcasting these types of shows.
Hey, if the TV people are smart at all, they'll be listening to this show right here, right now. It's kind of like watching these the Ancient Aliens guys, and that's an entertaining show to me too. But they've kind of run out of material. As much as I like George Tsoukalos and all those guys, they seem to give no credit at all to our ancient human. For being able to come up with any of this stuff on their own. It had to have been extraterrestrials that gave us the engineering to do this 3,000 years ago. It couldn't have been us. And, my ancient self is a little insulted by that. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
That's for another time.
But education is a key.
Yeah.
And, primarily these people, these charlatans, these hoax mongers, the woo-woo meisters, they feed upon uneducated people.
Yeah.
And they have a story that's close enough to sounding real that even very intelligent people can sometimes fall into it.
I'm sure.
If they buy the initial premise, and the initial premise is almost always the stating of a mystery that is not.
Right. And they make it visceral. So,
and if they can convince you that truly is a mystery, then their solution system, their logical solution system, makes every sense in the world.
Oh, sure. Well, that's the key to brainwashing, though. You create a fear and come up with seemingly the best answer for that fear.
Yeah. Now, fortunately, television has a completely different agenda than anybody in the paranormal, and I've had personal conversations with large network producers who have told me, we don't care what the story is. It's all about big personalities. That's what we want to see. We want the big personalities, not the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Come on, Mark. Tell us the inside skinny, man. Tell us some of the dirt, man.
Yeah, you've been there, man. Come on, spill.
Well, I can't say this. I'm thrilled that they got guys out there like David Roundtree getting out there now, and more people like him need to be jumping on some of these shows. And like I said, I think there's going to be a push away from the other shows just because they're so redundant anymore. But I mean, when you hit, Amish Paranormal and Paranormal Swamp Land or whatever else is out there,
even the Weather Channel's on the boat now.
You've kind of hit rock bottom when you've gone down that far. So, it needs. Unfortunately, they are, pandering to a younger crowd who are interested in weird people. And not to say that I'm not weird, but they're looking for different, and they don't care about the facts or the science behind anything. They want the
we're inches away from Honey Boo Boo, Paranormal Investigator. she could do it because her mom's not going to be a part of it anymore. But, she could grow up to taunt ghosts for a living, for the studio audience.
All to sell cornflakes, right?
Well, I hope it all very soon goes the way of K+8, man.
Oh, yeah, don't we all? Don't we all? You're preaching to the choir on that one. And the Kardashians, get rid of them too. Put them all on the same bus to nowhere.
The bus to nowhere.
The bus to nowhere.
All right.
Yeah.
You spelled that B-U-S. I thought you were saying B-U-S-T.
Oh, no. No, it should be Train to Nowhere, an old Savoy Brown Blues reference, which is better. Because that's at least, there's some intelligence behind that. And not behind any of these folks that were, it's too mainstream for. All right, I just leapt onto the wrong tangent. So
I know, dude. You started ranting a little bit, man.
A little bit, yeah.
Guys, we got about 10 minutes left. I got to give the server to Alan Warren. Is there any closing comments or promote your book, promote your events that you're going to be doing here in the future? Any books coming out or anything else? Feel free to do so. So we got about 10 minutes left.
Well, I'll start. In closing, I would like to say that we all have to hang out sometime. We've got to get together somewhere and just talk for days. Aside from that, I have started working on a new book, but it is, I think, at present anyway, a fiction. It may be a sequel to Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth, and it will continue featuring Detective Locke, a character inspired by Mark Keyes. But there will be some aliens involved, there will be ghosts involved, and there will be some tragedy involved. Either that or I won't write it.
Mark, what about you, man?
Yeah.
And hey, I'll just throw out there, you could find Chip's book right now, Even the Dead Won't Tell You the Truth, and Chasing Shadows at Row Publishing. That's rowpub.com.
Or you can find it ROWE. Yep.
That's right, for Barnes & Nobles or Amazon, and you can get that in ebook form as well.
Mark, doesn't Row Publishing have the, what is it, Hampton Roads imprint? Or is that a different publisher? Do you know?
They have, their imprint is, it's basically a white box with an R in the middle.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about their logo. I was using publishing terminology. That's all right. You could have a lot of different publishing names, publishers, but they may be under one umbrella, and all those publishing names become their imprints. That's what they call them. Yes. But anyway, for me, I've got two books on the table here trying to work on. It's writing for me is painful and slow. And I'm not a natural writer. It's not something that comes easily to me. And of course, when you're dealing in nonfiction and you're trying to be scientifically precise, it becomes very challenging, and also to write it in a way that is accessible to the general public. But the one I'm working on now, the working title is Einstein's Ghost.
Ooh.
The emerging solution to the paranormal puzzle.
Wow. I love that title.
Yeah, I'm. I was hesitant. My wife says, "Don't tell anybody that. Somebody will steal it." Man. And I'm asking him, could anybody else really write this book? And, well, no, not really, but. And the other one I'm going to be working on after this. The working title is The Multiverse Conspiracy.
I like that one too.
I like that one.
And because you mentioned them right here on the air, and there is transcripts, technically it's kind of copyrighted, so nobody can steal it.
That's right. Yeah.
You've heard it first, folks.
The subtitle is The Plot by Modern Science to Destroy All Things Spiritual.
Ooh.
Nice.
Man, that's good. I'm not going to sleep for a couple of days now.
Well, I've been known, my interviews have been known to to induce fetal positions and involuntary thumb sucking.
Oh, that's funny. But that won't happen with me, but I still won't sleep for a couple of days. I'm inspired, man. That's awesome. And how about you, Tim?
Well, you can find the podcast of tonight's show on the archive page at ztalkradio.com. After the show, I will be putting it up. You could also find Supernatural Realm on the Z Talk Radio Network Facebook page. Log in there, like it. I accept everybody's likes. The more, the better. That means, more people are listening to the show, more people are enjoying the show. And you could also find me at butlerparanormal.com. That's the team's website.
Awesome. I should interject real quickly since we're talking radio shows. I just had Mark Heise on as a guest for Beyond the Norm. Podcast is now available, and I have the great honor, really thanks to you, Tim, of having Thomas Fusco as a guest, January 19th of 2015.
Awesome.
Yes, except no substitutes.
No substitutes. That's right. And I will have slept by then. But I've already got some questions lined up.
Hey, Mark, are you still doing your radio show?
I am. Sunday nights, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's a live show now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Well, anytime you want to, have the audience take the red pill, just shoot me an email and we'll come in.
We will definitely get you back on.
Yeah, because look at what has happened since the last time he was on. See?
Oh my, yeah. I'm now a permanent speaker at the International Annual Paradigm Symposium.
Wow.
Last year
congratulations.
Thank you. This past October, they called me aside after I had spoke and saw what I did on the panel discussions, and they said, Tom, you have now a permanent seat at the table.
That's awesome. That's
awesome.
And I was just like, I actually started to cry a little bit. I got real emotional.
Can't blame you. Yeah.
So, but I still have yet to be invited to speak at any paranormal, any Paracon.
Wow. I guess we'll have to throw one so we can have you.
Well, we got one coming up next October. I think it's early October, late September, early October, out in the Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area. So we're going to have to get in touch over that.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yeah. The way I always figured it is that I'm not the guy that sells cornflakes, So, if I'm not a TV personality or something like that.
Well, you got to change that, Thomas. We got to get you at some of these events.
Yes.
Well, I don't have to change it. Other people have to change it.
We as the paranormal community need to change, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh.
The best part about this Paracon, it's a little bit different. We're not going with any celebrities from television at all. We want this to be very help-based, very information-based, and that's what we're trying to line up so people know what's out there and where they can get help and what kind of help is out there and where they can get information. So we wanted to put a little twist on it and kind of get away from the commercial ghost hunting scene a little bit.
Outstanding.
Well, I hope it's successful, Mark.
I think it would be because, the normal stuff seemingly is jumping the shark a little bit, and you see some of the bigger events that have been year in, year out, and they're kind of slowing down.
Yeah, they are. They're having trouble selling tickets now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's already the populist thing is beginning to fade. And I tell everybody else, man, for the most part, have hotel room and ticket, we'll travel, man.
Yeah. No.
I'll buy my own food.
Very good.
Well, guys, it's been an awesome 3 hours, and Mark, I want to thank you for coming on the show and sticking it out with us for 3 hours. I didn't really expect that, but I want to thank you for coming on the show, as well as Chip and Thomas. You guys were great, man.
Our pleasure and honor, brother.
This
it was a real blast, and definitely an honor to be in the company of you three gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Mark,
thank you, Mark.
Good talking to you again, brother.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. Awesome.
This will definitely go down as one of the best Supernatural Realm shows ever. I mean, it's been awesome to have the three of you on for sure.
Yeah, it's an honor to be
Special
here.
thanks to Christopher DiCasare for popping in there. That was great as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, how about Chris DiCasare popping in? Oh, awesome.
Yep. So on that, I'm going to go ahead and play the closing song, "Time for Me to Fly" by REO Speedwagon, and hope to talk to you guys soon.
Oh, of course, man.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for joining us, Thomas. What an honor that was, man. Wow. Awesome.
Yep. We'll definitely have to do it again. Have the three of you on, or maybe bring Chris on too as well. Maybe possibly,
Yeah, maybe like 3 a.m. since I'm not going to sleep anyway,
Oh. Hey, give me enough airtime. I'll piss off somebody.
Well, that sounds like a fun challenge.
I tell everybody where they can send hate mail, but I don't, no one ever listens. So. All right, guys, it's been great. It's been a great time talking to the three of you and having you guys on.
And it's been great. Thank you, and gentlemen. I wish you all a happy New Year, and happy holidays. I hope you have safe travels and good times.
Yeah, right back at you. And for everybody here and everybody listening, happy holidays to you all.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.